Merhaba, good morning from Washington, and good afternoon to all of you who are joining us virtually in Turkey. My name is Sean Heather, and I am the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Senior Vice President for International Regulatory Affairs. Today's session is focused on the digitization of the economy and digital transformation that is underway, that the pandemic has certainly accelerated, but we also want to talk about how this digital transformation can support the overarching goal that exists between our two countries, which is to drive trade volume to $100 billion. To help us explore today's topic, let me introduce our panel very briefly. First, we have, at least in my upper left screen, Turhan Özen, who is the Chief Cargo Officer of Turkish Airlines Cargo Operations. At least in my screen in the upper right, we have Liam Maxwell, who is the Director of Government Transformation with Amazon Web Services. And in my lower right screen, it is a pleasure to welcome Emre Karter, who is the CEO of Citi Turkey. Emre, let me also acknowledge that Citi has kindly supported and sponsored today's session. We appreciate you and your leadership with the Council and your support here today. Gentlemen, let's dive into our conversation. We've got about 45 minutes, and so we want to try to keep this lively. Let me start with you, Turhan. I think that the idea that goods have moved over time is not new. For centuries, we've been moving goods, maybe first by horseback, then maybe by some sort of wagon, to rail, to steam, to now airlines. But how those have moved has obviously changed over time. And digitization is bringing new capabilities to your world and how you do it. So give us a view into how you see Turkish Airlines cargo operation benefiting from digitization, where you've been, where you are now, where you're headed.
Thank you, Sean. First of all, it's a great pleasure to be here in this panel of American-Turkish conference. Yes, as you said, the digital transformation is a great adventure, also in logistics and air cargo industry. Well, first of all, I would like to underline Turkish Cargo is the logistics brand of Turkish Airlines, which is currently the airline which flies the highest number of countries in the world. But Turkish Cargo is the fastest growing cargo brand within the last 3 consecutive years. And this organization is also very much committed to the sustainable growth. Due to several regulations, high requirements of standards for safety and security, very fragmented structure of the air supply chain, air cargo industry is not a pioneering one in technology and digitalization, to be honest, in this domain. However, it means that there is a big room and big opportunity for development. Therefore, technology and digitalization constitutes one of the 3 pillars of our 2023 vision, Turkish Cargo's 2023 vision and strategic roadmap, where we build the plan of our future to grow further. It's our journey, and digitalization and technology is one of these 3 main pillars. From a quite modest position, I should say, in the last 5 years back, we took the path to a sectoral pioneers level. And we have gradually became one of the leading brands in air cargo industry. We are not only aiming to be pioneer specifically in air cargo, but looking from the whole supply chain sector, we are aiming to be one of the highest implementing technology and digital initiatives. In order to lay the foundations of our digital adventure, we first began 3 years back by reconstructing our information technology architecture. And then we upgraded almost our entire technology base, and starting with the modernization of our warehouse management systems in our hub, we took a start to our journey. The new system by this year, by 2017, helped us to take the next steps forward and onward. We could quickly integrate our operational systems with new technology applications and focus on digital innovation. Immediately afterwards, we started to digitalize our decision in support systems and decision support systems, And I believe some of them now seems to be pioneer in the industry. With the adoption of these several standards and process changes, now I can say that we are in the mid-road of the adventure in ensuring a safe and secure and effective operations. We have recently saw a very interesting result of these efforts, especially in the transport of pharma, medical, and dangerous products and goods. We call it generally special cargo in airline industry. We have grown our special cargo rate year on year 67%. And just in 2 years' time, our global market share skyrocketed from 3% to 5.4%. So we are by far definitely the fastest growing air cargo industry, not in general cargo, not only in general cargo, but also in special cargo and solutions like pharma, like e-commerce and medical and other products that requires specific handling and specific solutions. Here, our investments mainly concentrated in digital investments, as well as the automation and optimization in the hub. And all of these mainly focusing first to minimize human error for safety and security concerns, and then increasing the speed and efficiency of our processes. As you know and mentioned, Istanbul Airport is one of the world's largest airports, and which is just opened last year. And we are now about to complete our investment there, our mega hub, which we name Smart and East of Istanbul. And this will be fully functional by next year. It is the newest air cargo hub in the world, and it will not only be one of the largest, with more than 180,000 square meters of closed area under single roof and more than 4 million tons of cargo handling capacity per year, but also it will be the smartest with its cutting-edge technologies. Many of them, we suppose and assume being first in air cargo world. So Smartest, this new mega hub, is a game changer for us and probably for overall aviation industry. So the digital transformation that will be enabled with the completion of this investment will definitely pull us to the next stage and take the leadership in the industry from a technology perspective. And finally, very much related to the Istanbul and our hub location, as you know, Turkey and Istanbul is located at the center of Asia, Africa, and Europe. We are at the center of gravity of whole trade lanes, and as well as whole air connections in the old world, in the three continents of Europe, Africa, and Asia. And as the Turkish Airlines is the airline flying to the highest number of countries for both passengers and cargo with Turkish Cargo, we are clearly one of the largest and by far the most spread air bridge connecting America, United States, and its economy, not only to Turkey, but also to the rest of the world. Turkish Airlines and Turkish Cargo are operating the most extensive air bridges connecting the old world and its economy, with the new world and its economy. That's certainly a very clear picture of our industry. And through digitalization and effective use of technologies further, we will support the economical growth and trade of both countries even further. This efforts definitely will add value to several sectors, manufacturers in both countries, businesses in both countries with high value products, and industries with high export and import volumes. We already established this bridge and sustained it during very difficult pandemic times, and we keep on investing to this mega hub to complete our transition further. And by 2021, we will provide the highest capacity and connectivity with a reliable service no matter how much the traffic between the two countries will be. So we are ready to support.
Turhan, thank you for those opening comments. Emre, let me come to you. Cash has always been king in the economy, but maybe today cash is becoming digital. But adoption rates about digital currency is kind of widely different from one economy to the other. Can you share with us some of the benefits of cash going digital and how consumers and businesses can take advantage of those benefits and accelerate that transformation?
Thank you, Sean. And as you mentioned, the physical cash to digital money is real. But how and when the industries should invest and the countries should invest and why is the journey is worth taking. And I think the proof of the pudding comes with the study that we've been commissioning to Imperial College London in the last 6 years, focusing on this particular phenomena, physical cash to going into digital money. So the report particularly mentions three sets of benefits. And first, and if you ask me the most intuitive, the one is the digital money usage for the financial inclusion. With higher purchasing power, digital money increases the pie for everyone is involved. Today, across the globe, individuals and informal economies have to pay a higher rate for credit, lack of safe means of savings, and let alone the cost comes with the handling the physical cash. Access to financial services are key elements for overcoming these realities. Not only does it help to the consumers to accumulate, increase, and protect their money, but also allows them to weather the financial shocks. So the report suggests that 10%, and these are global numbers, 10% increase in digital money readiness, increases in adoption in the countries included in the index can help an estimated 202 million individuals enter to the formal financial sector. This translates into an additional 1 trillion moving from the informal economy to the formal economy. And this in turn can allow governments to collect in excess of $100 billion in incremental taxes. And if you extrapolate these amounts, there is a direct correlation of digitizing cash into sustainably growing GDPs of the countries. So the second benefit, and that is outlined, the digital money reducing the costs. Although cash is often thought to be as costless means of transaction, that is not the case. Handling cash has multiple hidden costs, such as theft, fraud, cost of securing, storing, transporting cash, and so on and so forth. So a recent study by the WEF indicates the leakage of effects of these 5 to 25% of the total benefits accounts for 75% of the total losses. So it's so disproportionate. Governments disbursements through digital money, again, arguably has the potential, has the higher social impact, and so on and so forth. Last but not least, I think we've seen this in the COVID situation. Migration of the consumer flows from physical to digital is becoming even a higher phenomena than in the past. Flight to digital is our reality of our lives. So just let me brief how to invest into this space. I think from one country to another, there is no one size fits all type of an approach. Not every market is created equal in terms of readiness or its needs. So replicating a successful approach, again, from one market to another is not really a silver bullet. Every market has to, weigh in its own sort of requirements and so on and so forth. Second, I guess the businesses and governments must tailor their approach to the readiness stage to the end market. As I mentioned, it starts with the consumer behavior, and it's there. But understanding the readiness of a burning imperative that shapes that consumer behavior from one country to another is different. And it comes the sequence of events turn this into an ecosystem that goes along with governments, banks, infrastructure institutions like telecoms, fintechs, universities, academia, name it. So then comes the convenience of the ease of use and the choosing the right platform for a wide area adoption. And again, there are proven models already available in the world, from Africa, from Asia, and it's really a drop-down menu of choices that you can pick. So I'll stop here, and I guess, like, you know, the benefits goes really a long list of things.
Well, we'll come back and talk more about that study in our second round. But let me bring you, Liam, into the conversation. You know, while our first two presenters talked about how their companies are taking advantage of digitization, most people think of AWS as supporting that for companies. But your role with the company is actually, how do you support governments and their digital transformation? And one of the things in which you and I talked about in preparation for today's conversation is that governments often act as consumers in the economy and have a huge role to play for government procurement. How do you see, in your role in advising companies on digital transformation, the role government procurement can play in driving these kinds of transformations across an economy?
Yeah, thanks very much, Sean, and thank you very much for having me. Very nice to meet you, Emre and Turhan. And thank you for having me to your event today. I'm sort of halfway, slightly more towards the Turkish end. I'm from London today, as you may recognize from my accent. But I work with AWS around the world, helping governments transform themselves and change their business model so they can start taking account of actually two of the components that Emre and Turhan were talking about. You'll have seen in the response to COVID, actually, the speed and scale are the two things that are driving both of your businesses, and the capability to run fast is something which is well known to private business. The thing we found really interesting in the last 6 to 9 months has been the speed at which government can also run, and governments, when they turn their minds to it, can really go quickly. So it's really interesting that speed and scale applies to them too, and I know we'll talk a little bit about security later. But also, governments spend quite a lot of money. UK, for an example, 1% of GDP was being spent on government IT programs, not necessarily to good effect in 2010. And we helped save quite a lot of that money when I was CTO and change that into projects that generally met the user need, worked, were more efficient, and started to deliver more services. But we did that without the old style use of an oligopoly and outsourcing services. We did a lot of that by using small businesses. And government itself can provide a huge opportunity for that procurement and those procurement dollars to be fed into the local digital economy. And by using a procurement framework starting in 2012, we built up a use of procurement where 50% of the all of the spending that government was doing on new IT projects was going to small businesses. Now, when you're talking about £3-4 billion, that's a huge amount of money that can go into the local digital economy. And the reason that governments were able to do that, and the reasons that small businesses were able to deliver those services, was that we migrated a lot of those services to the cloud. And so there's concerns for small businesses where they previously had to have their own data centers, they'd had to run everything on premise, they'd had to provide each one of them had to provide massive industrial scales of security. That was no longer something that everyone had to go and get, because you could leverage a cloud provider and use that to drive the reform in your government. It generated income for smaller businesses. It generated great savings for government, because every pound we spent, we saved a pound. But what it also meant was it generated skills throughout the country in small businesses, which generated tax and payroll taxes, which generated more money for the government to spend on services. So if you can get that virtuous circle right, the cloud can help you provide not just the scale you need, and I would say that Turhan's scale is a really huge achievement and really impressive to see Turkish Airlines grow that large. But also it gives you the speed that you can work out quickly, and that's where Emre's business is really able to generate a competitive advantage by speed. You can do that if you leverage a common, secure cloud resource, and that's the thing we found in the UK, and it's actually a thing we're seeing across governments around the world. That speed and scale can help you not only deliver better services, but actually start to build your digital economy. And just to give you a couple of statistics to think on, the average, the digital economy in the UK is between 12 and 17% of GDP, depending how you measure it. It's just digital economy. It's the biggest per head in the world. And the digital economy, the wages in the average economy are about 29,000 a year. They're 41 in the digital economy. So it's not just that you generate jobs, it's also that you generate more jobs that pay more. And that's much better for the economy as a whole. So there's a real opportunity here to be grasped if you can leverage that scale and that speed.
Thanks, Liam. Turhan, let me come back to you. You mentioned in your opening comment. Sorry, I get some feedback there. You mentioned in your opening comments the new Turkish airport and your new world-class facility. Can you dive in a little deeper and tell us about some of the technologies that are being embedded in that facility and how they will move cargo more quickly through that incredible hub?
Yes, Sean. And as Liam pointed out about speed and scale, that's basically the idea behind the smartest, this mega investment. Indeed, when all the phases are completed, the total yearly capacity of this hub will be 4 million tons. Just to give you an idea from an out-of-sector perspective, this is roughly 15% of global air cargo volume. So definitely we are committed to make Istanbul and Turkish Airlines, Turkish Cargo is one of the key players, the hub of the world in air cargo and express business. However, as we call it smartest and aim to make it really smart, we are after not only scale, and in order to provide and sustain the scale, we are after the speed. And this is where the technology and the digitalization is mainly crucial. If we can categorize the structure here between infrastructure and digital, in the infrastructure part, ASRS, automatic storage retrieval systems, warehouse management systems, automated and optimized are already advanced to certain level in high scales. However, the trend of the industry through digitization and other industry 4.0 requirements push us to improve this infrastructure further with Internet of the Things and advanced data mining and advanced data analysis. These systems then can play a key role in realizing our sustainable growth strategies. We are aiming to enable all the machines, equipment, systems, and our employees, our people, to talk to each other in the hub, in the main site. And we have already initiated and completed some of the projects to make this digitalization to work on full extent. The human factor in air cargo, in aviation in general, is still a key factor. As I said, due to several security and safety regulations, and due to several fragmentation of the industry between airports, tarmac managements, customs clearances, forwarders, logistics companies, and the air carriers as well. But the digitization here is the key to integrate the whole value chain from end to end in order to provide agile and quite responsive or proactively active to customer changing needs. I can give you an example mainly related to pharma and medical shipments, which have increased very dramatically during the pandemic time. For example, it is very important to track and trace of such goods, as well as e-commerce and express courier goods as well. And in order to meet this request with much less human interface, during the early months of the pandemic, we have very quickly developed and launched our own WhatsApp chatbots in order to provide an interface between our systems and our clients that can easily check the status of their delicate shipments and cargoes, that can easily check the tariffs and schedules and any other information that are very quickly updated in our systems. Additionally, again, in early pandemic times, as we have encouraged most of our teams to work home office due to safety and health reasons, we have taken this opportunity to add new, we call it metal color collets. Robotic process automation. These are mainly robots which are doing more and more quite, let's say, more difficult tasks than straightforward tasks. And we have with this technologies deployed, we have ability to increase our capacity and capability to carry much more pharma and medical products than we usually could do. And now we are preparing this technology to efficiently increase our capabilities to get ready for the vaccine transportation, hopefully in the near future.
Emre, you mentioned in your first round of comments the benefits of going digital with one's money, and you all have been involved in this study that's referred to as the Digital Money Index, I believe, dating back to 2014, and is now in its sixth year. And I think you mentioned that it tracks some 84 countries. In contrast to your opening comments about the benefits, what would you say governments and businesses and consumers need to have as their strategies for taking better advantage of these benefits? What do they need to be doing? What are the policies? What are the practices that these stakeholders need to be implementing in order to take full advantage and move up in that rating system that you all have developed?
Well, Sean, as I mentioned, I think no country is alike and in this journey, and each one has its own specific. And I think countries should be crystal clear here on what pain points that they're addressing or trying to solve. Is it financial inclusion? Is it economic development through some trade and commerce, or is it some economy that functions 7/24 because that come to that stage, and a real articulation of the pain. Then I guess comes an honest self-assessment on how you rank yourself, on the criteria and the criteria that the study shows, or we came up with the Imperial College. It has four main pillars, and it starts with the government and the market environment. Then it comes to technological infrastructure, propensity to adopt, which goes mainly the consumer behaviors or the citizen behaviors. Last but not least is the digital money solutions already available in the market, e-government or so on and so forth. Then comes you have to put in place a well-articulated strategy on how to get there based on the pain that you're solving. I think it starts with developing a holistic approach, and comes with addressing some of the bottlenecks that the country has. And it is really that the whole thing about the digital money readiness is a journey. So often the case, there is no destination, but there are points to reach, and then another a destination redefines itself. And then I guess for adoption, you have to provide incentives for either the consumers or the businesses or in combined, and it can be a combination of the effective tax incentives for the businesses or for the citizens or the consumers, a cashback in driving and social benefits and so on and so forth, some sort of a benefit to just reignite the place. And I guess again, each country is different. You have to take advantage of the technology drivers as the consumer behavior. In some countries, the mobility, ride sharing becomes a huge ecosystem. You have to basically take advantage of it. In some countries, basically consumers can sort of influence already digitally goes into the e-commerce. And I guess like, either an Amazon or Jumia in Africa is a good example. They have already created ecosystems that you can play and plug around a lot of other digital solutions around these ecosystems. So again, it comes with the country itself, its own specific, and the way that how you build this, the building blocks around it.
Liam, beyond the conversation we had on government procurement, when you look at Turkey and its efforts as a government to become more digitally transformed, where would you point to some successes that the Turkish government has had, and what might you advise them should be their focus going forward?
Yeah, thanks very much, Sean. Good question. And it actually goes back to Emre's point. It's about building services that work for citizens, that mean that they want to engage, because thinking about market segmentation or different areas of business to pitch for, government doesn't do any of that. Government is for everybody. Everybody needs to be able to access it. But in turn, there's got to be a reason to help people move towards the use of government services. Now, actually, if you look at Turkey, for example, I think the last figures were that using the state portal, I think there was something like 600 different agencies on there, more than 5,000 services that are operating through that, with 1.2 billion people visiting in the last year. That was the figures I was given for 2019, which as a government, that's a really good start, because it means you've got a huge volume of people coming through, trying to work and using services. So your penetration of the market is working and is high. The next stages of that are that you're not, interestingly, looking for, as a commercial company, might be looking for sticky users and users to come to you. You're actually looking for really smooth, quick transactions. In the words of my colleague in Estonia, Sim Sikut, you're really looking for transactions so that people don't realize they're using the government, that they are just using the data and using the resources to get the services that they need. And that's the really smart approach. So that means designing around citizens, designing in many ways quite humbly around citizens, so you're not putting the government straight out there. You're actually giving people the services that they want, that only government can provide. But then again, being able to change the design according to users' needs. So although lots of users, I mean, if you think about 5-6 years ago, we were talking lots of users would be using a computer. Now, pretty much everyone's using a phone. It's a different form factor. It's a different approach. Your design needs to be able to work with those solutions and change with those solutions as you go through the work. So you need to have a flexible architecture. You need to have the ability, again, to scale, and you need to have the ability to develop services quickly and effectively. And I think that's where Turkey is in one of those stages where you're actually able to probably think clearly about this. You could probably leapfrog a large number of developments that particularly in Western Europe have been doing over the last 5 years in terms of digital government, because you don't have any of that legacy. You don't have any of the huge amounts of legacy kit and legacy business processes that have already been engineered and designed once in the era of e-government. You've got the traffic coming towards you. You've now got the capability to build services that could really start to work quickly and effectively and leapfrog Western Europe and the sort of e-government approaches and start working with a really truly digital government. And that's what's really exciting about Turkey. And one of the reasons why Amazon and AWS in particular, we're now starting to invest in Turkey, because it does offer that opportunity.
Well, gentlemen, we've got about 10 minutes left before we need to wrap out. And so as we move through our last round of questions here, just mindful of the time. Turhan, I started out by saying one of the goals of the U.S.-Turkish relationship is to move trade volumes up to $100 billion annually. How do you see the role of Turkish Airlines and Turkish cargo playing a significant contributor to helping us reach that goal?
Thanks, Sean. We see a great opportunity here. Indeed, according to the statistics, 35% of cross-border global trade is being carried, in terms of value, is being carried by air cargo. though in terms of volume and weight, it's just 1%. So the key value to the people and to the economies in terms of trade goes through air cargo transportation mode. Turkish Cargo, as the flag carrier of Turkey, already played, but also committed to play a key role in US to Turkey and Turkey to US trade from that perspective. But it's not only for us the US and Turkey trade, but also the US trade with whole Europe, Asia, and Africa is already sustained to some significant market share and even ready to go further between the American economy and these three continents' major economies. We are currently operating more than 15 weekly freighter capacity to 5 different cities and states in the US. And with more than 160 truck connections, we are virtually connecting every state and city in the United States with 126 different countries in the old world, mainly starting from Turkey. And the total capacity we are providing is more than 5,000 tons per month. This is a very significant deployment considering air cargo volumes. And during the pandemic time, though we have this sizable network, in line with other airlines, in 3 weeks of March, Turkish Airlines, we have also almost lost 80% of our passenger capacity to the ground with all these restrictions, travel restrictions and others due to COVID-19. But Turkish Cargo was one of the first companies in the aviation industry to deploy wide-body passenger aircrafts for full cargo use only flights. Therefore, we kept our extensive network running and functioning during these pandemic times, and we kept these volumes that I mentioned between US and Turkey and US to all the other countries that Turkish Airlines is serving directly during the last 6 to 7 months as well. Practically, we are currently making 70% of Turkey to US and US to Turkey exports and imports in terms of value we carry as Turkish Airlines and Turkish Cargo, its logistics brand. Therefore, we are committed to take this to 100%, and we are currently carrying 3.5% of all US air exports and air imports between US and the rest of the world. So we are even taking a significant share, which I believe after our growth plans in the next few years will reach to 5% plus. And so that the Turkish Airlines and Turkish Cargo will also be a key player in big US market for connecting US economy to international trade and international commerce. Therefore, this target of 100 billion, though it's challenging, I'm sure for all the enterprises and businesses from other side, is very, very motivating for us, I need to say. Thank you.
Leon, let me come to you. You mentioned that you at one time in your career were the UK government's kind of chief technology officer. And when you talk about the digital economy from a policy standpoint, you can't not think about conversations that are happening around the world on data localization and the importance of data flows. Having served in government and thought about the question of data localization and the importance of data flows, where data is located, the need for government to access data, taking your Amazon Web Services hat off for a minute and putting on the hat that you wore inside the UK's government, how should governments think about data flows and data localization and government access needs?
Yeah, I think really important question. Thanks, Sean. I'll put on my my previous hat then and describe what our journey was. We had a real issue with security. We really wanted to move to have modern government, but we also needed to have modern and effective security. And a large amount of that relied around where we stored our data and what we looked after and where our data actually was within our control or not. And I took a really strong view on this as we did in 2013 when we went cloud first. And we started using cloud because of the security requirements that it gave us. It gave us much greater security capabilities. But increasingly, in that question you had there about data localization and data sovereignty, of those two, the most important is data sovereignty. The data localization is it's interesting, and where my data actually sits is something of genuine, it can be of genuine interest to me, but it's the control over that data and the capability to control and protect that data that's the most important to me as a technologist. And so we chose to use the cloud because actually it gave us much greater control and security over our data than just the sentimental picture of where something was at that point. And so that gave us our digital sovereignty and the data sovereignty over government data. And there's quite a lot of published work around how we made our security modern and made it much more effective, because instead of me thinking what was I doing in the 300 data centers around the country that I had to look after, actually by consolidating into a cloud-based environment, it increased my security posture. The problem we had in those days, and this is 2013, is there was no cloud provider in the UK of any scale. And so what we had to do was look at where we placed our data. I was extremely comfortable, and my colleagues were extremely comfortable that we started placing our data in Ireland. And that was because the cloud security model gave us the capability. We ran the keys, we owned the keys, we knew where the data of the keys were stored. Where the data itself was a passing concern, really, because it was how we had access to it. And that's the one of the reasons why the cloud model was so attractive to us, was because the provider, like these days AWS, we do the data, we look after the security of the cloud. The customer, the government, looks after security in the cloud. And that freedom to have data sovereignty inside the cloud really freed up much more than just cost savings, speed of ability, speed and agility to deliver. But it actually meant that we had true sovereignty over our data. And in fact, interestingly, having lobbied and got the infrastructure to get AWS and other cloud providers into the UK, I noticed as I looked on the logs as I came into the company that quite a lot of our data is still in Dublin from the UK. And that's entirely okay, because the security keys is where, that's the thing you need to worry about. And the sovereignty is what you need to worry about. So my general message would be... Yeah.
I was going to say, we appreciate that perspective. I want to make sure we get to Emre before we run out of time and give him the final word. Emre, obviously, technology brings lots of disruptors to every industry. There's lots of what one might refer to as non-traditional financial services players now in the fintech space. How is Citi managing the competition with fintech, and how are you yourselves positioning yourselves as a fintech company yourself?
Well, thank you, Sean. I guess this is it started perhaps like 6 years ago, that the tagline was the fintech disrupting the banks, and it's going to be displacing them as incumbents, and within time it's going to be another Kodak story. So I think we're in a bit different place as at the moment, and when you look at the statistics between the 14 to 17, 75% of the VC investment goes into the fintechs that are claiming that they are disruptors, and that composition has significantly changed in the last 2 years, that the 75% of the VC money right now goes into the fintechs that are collaborating with banks and complementing with banks in their solutions. So today, fintechs are our clients, fintechs are our partners, fintechs are our tech providers, and obviously in some cases they're also our competitors. I'll give you one example that we have run a fintech challenge last year in Middle East and North Africa, and Turkey was included. And there are 160 applicants in 20 countries around the 4 problem statements that we have issued. Not for a surprise that the highest number of applicants came from Turkey, and our finalists, 2 of them, 2 out of 8 were from Turkey, and one of the winners at the end, one of those finalists. And now we put in place 9 months after the challenge a ready-to-go solution in the market, and with 2 clients already piloted, and hopefully will now take that particular fintech and go to introduce them in other countries. So that is how I really see the challenge. I think fintechs are a complementing, a part of our industry, and how we bring this, are the part of our digital transformation. And I guess, again, the truth is the matter that, I think in some cases, yes, they will disrupt, and I think, we should be quite happy about it.
Well, glad to know that there's a partnership there in terms of the way in which traditional finance and new finance are working collaboratively to bring these technologies to market. Gentlemen, we have reached our time. I want to thank each of you for joining and sharing your perspectives in this conversation. I want to give a big thanks again to Citi for sponsoring this particular portion of the program. And let me remind all those who are in our audience that up next, in just a few minutes, we're going to have a conversation with Ambassador Satterfield, the U.S. Ambassador to Turkey. So with that, we will do our virtual round of applause to each of our panelists for the time that they spent with us this morning and in preparing. Thank you all. Look forward to continuing this conversation moving forward.